Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys know how we're doing it. We got our second installment of the Ancestral Healing episode, and today we have an amazing topic, and we have an amazing guest, as well as my co-host, Ms. Andrea Brunswick. And before I bring them up here, I want to talk about the topic that we're talking about today, is understanding healing through understanding healing our ancestral traumas. And we got an amazing person for you guys today to come up here. So if you guys have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section. But before we get started, if this is your first time, do me a favor, head over to that YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And without further ado, I'm going to bring up my guest and my co-host. You guys going to have a blast today, okay? Here's Andrea and here's Kimberly for you guys. So before we get started, everybody introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, Tony, I am so happy to be here. And sorry, I'm just trying to be techie and have this streaming to my Instagram. Hi, everybody. I'm Andrea Brunswick, and I'm really so thrilled to be able to co-host this series that Tony and I are doing. I'm over here in Toronto, Canada. And I am a strategic life, not enough coffee today, a creative life strategist for women 50 and over. And I really help them with where they're finding themselves at the stage of life where they didn't think that they would find themselves at their stage of life. But, you know, there's a common thread here with all of us, and that is grief. So we're going to unpack a lot today, Tony. You're right. Today's going to be amazing. And Kimberly, I'm so thrilled that you're here. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Yeah, it's my Thank you, Andrea. First of all, let me just say I love the work that you're doing in the world. Women over 50 deserve the respect that we have earned, and so I appreciate that you're in the world doing that work and bringing this message into the world. It's very necessary. So I'm Kimberly Ngonyama, and I really am thrilled to be here. When Tony put out the bat signal in a Facebook group that we are both a part of, I thought that's my lane. I'm going to step into this with this person and have this conversation, because I think it's something that we don't talk about enough, especially in certain communities. So let me just say, Tony, thank you for being who you are. It's a real calling that you've answered, and I know that. I can tell that already. So thank you for hearing and answering the call. And again, I'm Kimberly. I am, really, let's just take a minute to honor both of you because it's a big deal. I'm Kimberly, and I am a executive leadership strategist. I founded a movement called the Multidimensional CEO. I believe that leadership is a sacred calling, and having been a veteran of corporate America for 21 years and having stepped off of that path, and I now bring all of the medicine of who I'm being in the world as a Nyanga, a Sangoma, and as a Haitian Voodoo Mambo, and many other things to the world of leadership, where I believe that we are wise to remember what the ancestors knew and are still here to teach us about how to really lead ourselves and others. And so I serve as a trusted spiritual advisors to some of the top leaders of the world. We aim to create what I call the new 1%, those of us who are multidimensional in nature and who are bringing all of our spiritual gifts to the world of leadership.
Well, thank you again, and I want to pay homage to you as well. Thank you for the work that you're doing. You know, when Andrea and I started talking about this, you know, it's something. You know, when we go through grief, we often try to find those different areas. Right? Where does it begin? And so here's Dr. Latoya right now. So before and I finish that statement, Dr. Latoya, thank you for joining us today. Can you hear me? Oh, you're muted. if you're having a hard time hearing or anything, go to the settings in your computer and make sure that everything is set up in your computer. That's normally because when you use a StreamYard, they kind of default back to certain settings. So to make sure that your mic is working, and your speakers and everything else. So while Dr. Latoya is doing that, and before I have her come on and introduce herself, as we were talking, when I was going through a grieving process, I was starting the process of the loss of my son. And so when it came about, I learned how to sit with my grief. And this time was different, and which led into the conversation between Andre and I. And I began to question it, like, okay, what do you need from me? And I remember just very, very, very distinctly, it's saying, you need to go here. You need to go here. And it took me along this path. And it was unlike anything I had ever experienced. And so I began to go through these things. And that's when the word ancestors started to come in. And then I began to ask my ancestors, what do you need from me? And they began to say, help us break these chains. We also want peace as well. And so I did. And what ended up happening, and I don't know if this is common or anything like that, but as soon as I started to do that in real time, it's like I shed something. All of that crap and everything. And then after that, life began to open up and make more sense to me. And that's what led us down the conversation between Andrea and I to do this series. And I was going, I wonder how many people feel the same way that we do, right? Or even have that in-depth understanding of healing. And so the series is designed to take people past what they think healing is and take a deep dive and go, I wonder if we're carrying this trauma from our ancestors. Now, Dr. Latoya, are you with us right now? Take yourself off of mute. Yeah, you still got the mute up there. If you go to the top of your go to the bottom. There you go.
I got you. Yes.
Awesome,
Technology is not being my friend today. It's okay.
That's okay. Hey, that is totally fine.
It's all good. It's all good.
So happy to see your beautiful face today. Thank you for joining us. And then I know that you just heard what we was talking about. So I want to take a minute and let you introduce yourself as well.
All right. Cool. Hi, everyone. So first, thank you all for having me. Sorry for my tardiness. I am Dr. Latoya Davis, and I am the owner of Chi Healing Institute. But one of my primary areas of focus is ancestral. It's helping people understand areas where their ancestors may be creating blockages, or where they may be holding on to passed down traumas, and looking at and understanding how those things are impacting them today, right? I always say sometimes the things that you're going through are not really yours, they're your ancestors. And if we don't take a look at that and kind of ask the questions that you asked, then we end up fighting a battle that is pretty difficult to win, right? Because we're fighting it from one perspective, and it's not that perspective at all. It's a different perspective.
Now, I want to start this off with a very, very specific question. When we think about healing ancestral traumas, in your own words, what do you think about that? Because we have different cultures, right? And we all have ancestors. When we think about that question right there, where does that lead us? So people have a better understanding.
Okay. So for me, sorry, I'll go. For me, it is a layered idea, because I do have clients that come from multiple backgrounds, multiple walks of life. And I myself started doing ancestral work through an African traditional spiritual system. So my perspective initially around ancestor and what that looked like was completely different. But where I am now, when I talk about releasing ancestor or healing ancestral trauma, I start with the notion that we as physical beings are the representation of all of those who have come before us, right? And that's not You know, that's a simple, like we can all understand that, right? I am my mother's child. I am my grandparents, grandchild, like all of those things that make sense to us on a logical standpoint. And so then to say, okay, if I am my mother's child, I saw the things from I saw the things my mother went through. I saw how she functioned in life. I saw the way that she dealt with things. I saw those traits, and I inherited some of those, right? She also saw those things from her parents. She inherited those. So just at base level, I think that that's the way that we can kind of all start to think about ancestral trauma. Because the way that we react to things are oftentimes the result of a trauma, right? We adapt and we adjust in order to create safety in our life. And we can continue to follow that idea back and back and back really far down the lineage and say that if I am all of those who have come before me, then I am also carrying those traits and habits that they have adapted to adjust and survive in life.
I love that. I love that. Kimberly?
Yeah, so I agree with that. I think that's beautifully said. When I think about the source, the potential first source, which is I'm a root cause kind of person. Like I want to go all the way back to the origins of a thing. So tracing back to where we can, look at science of ancestral trauma, we can look at epigenetics and specifically what we know as the mitochondrial DNA or mtDNA, which is the matrilineal line. Which the cool thing about looking at that as the source of our trauma, it's the matrilineal line is very consistent over multiple generations, so hundreds of years. That part of our bloodline is relatively constant. And it's that MT or the mitochondrial DNA that is actually where we can trace back the source of ancestral wounding. Oftentimes, I like to say kind of jokingly, this is a man's world, but it would not be anything without a woman or a girl. Oftentimes we look to the masculine for answers to questions around wounding or trauma because the world has taught us about duality and polarity. It's really this matrilineal line that has the deepest and most consistent clues about where ancestral trauma sits in our lives. So if we trace back the mother line, because this way, this is going to make total sense to everyone. You are, the embryo you is in your grandmother's body before you're even born. We know that's just science. So if you just continue that follow that scientific line, you know that any trauma, whatever your grandmother experienced, and therefore what her grandmother experienced and her grandmother experienced, is also going to be your literal epigenetic DNA sequence experience in this lifetime. This is how we source trauma back to the root. And so if we're just defining the source of trauma, that's where I would begin. And then we can continue the conversation about, to me, that's the so what, then there's the now what of, okay, great, that's cool to know. What are we going to do about it? But that's where the source comes from.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Andre, you want to touch on that? Kimberly, do me a favor, because you're picking
Both,
up a lot of
yeah.
time. What's happening is that your connection is not making it. Jump off and jump on. It should help your connection out a lot better.
Okay, I will be right. I live in the country, so fingers crossed, but I will do that and come right back.
Okay, sometimes that corrects it. If not, we're going to keep going. Andre, you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, because you know what? I love what both of these amazing women just brought to this. Because we do. I mean, you give a beautiful explanation, definition, call it what we want, of really ancestral trauma. Because as you put it, Tony, when you opened up, we often will only think, maybe to our great grandparents. And depending on where we are today in our own lives, and if we have any of our own, our parents still alive or our grandparents, and we can hear these kind of stories and we can find out. But when we don't have our family alive, and we have these traumas that we're going through in our lives, and we don't understand them, which is, again, why we're all here today and unpacking, really, really understanding. So everybody's trying to scramble with understanding their own traumas that they're going through right now. But as you ladies put it, it goes much deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And when we think about it, obviously, and when we think about abuse in a family, and you'll hear that, yeah, well, my mother had suffered from it, and her mother had suffered, and her mother, it makes sense to us, but does it really make sense? And I'm so glad that we're really just unpacking it. So I'd love to talk about the importance of, I hope this, and if I'm not clear with this, please let me know. So we have our traumas and we're wanting to heal our traumas, but how important is the connection to getting to that root, the ancestral, not just the root of the initial trauma that the individual's going through now, because that has its root, but there's this other root. Am I making sense?
Yeah. And I want to touch on that a little bit because I do understand the multi-layers. And as being a male, it was kind of like a different area for me. See, I'm a men's grief coach, and I've been working with men in grief for about 6 years now. And so, when I meet other people, I'm a student of this thing. I love everything about it. I love tracing things because healing has been part of my journey. My own healing, helping those men that are around me heal, and for themselves and for their families and for their friends to make them better versions of themselves. And in my world, I practice what I preach. And so when we think about the ancestral part of it, I have to also let people understand that there's a generational trauma and then there's ancestral trauma. And as Kimberly was saying, the epigenetics that come along with that. And it just started taking me down this hole of understanding the blood ties. And then we go back, to source, right? Why am I here? What is the purpose of my being? What is the direction? And, what does it truly mean to heal? What does that truly mean? And I have to say, from my own perspective, it was a chaotic, beautiful mess, right? Understanding my ancestors, things that I never really understood, and being a young Black male in America, we often trace it back to, or trace it and limit ourselves to slavery and things like that, right? Now, when we think about source, where we actually come from and whom we actually come from, there's a lot of blood in the sand. There's a lot of blood in the sand. And so, and what I mean by that, I love to understand how they live, my bloodline, and the things that they went through. I don't know if anybody ever asked this question before, but oftentimes when I was going through something, or karma would show up and punch me in the mouth, I used to often go, I didn't even do this. What are you doing to me, right? And I always felt as if I was paying for someone else's actions. And it wasn't until I started looking at those chains, and I was like, you know what do I need to do to help you break those chains? Because I want peace in the world, but I cannot have peace without you having peace. So maybe, just maybe, I can help you in order for us to break those cycles, so my family don't have to feel the way that I have, and maybe gain a lot more knowledge during that journey as well. So, but that's just my thoughts about it, and I'm always curious about what do we look at when we look at those things.
Yeah, so you packed a lot into that statement, and I think, well, one thing I'm going to just say, so for me, generational and ancestral are not different. Oftentimes we do think of our more immediate ancestors, right? Those that someone can remember their name. I perceive our ancestral lineage to go back to the beginning of time, right? And at that beginning of time, because at no point in the creation of me getting to this point did someone go in and remove, you know, the mitochondrial or the blood that was flowing through to take that out to then continue to producing me. So for me, the idea of generational and ancestral coexist. And because of that, sometimes it is also a little bit easier to understand the nuance when we're looking at the traumas and the things that we're trying to heal. Because it's easier to say, you know, during, and I am not a history buff, so it's easier to say, you know, during the 1920s, this is what was happening socially. So generally, this was the energy in the world, and it makes sense then that I am carrying this, right? During the 1800s, this was the energy in the world, and so it makes sense that this thing has also carried down through my traits. So I don't separate, you know, those two aspects, but I do believe, like Kimberly said, it is super, and Andrea said it is super, important to get to the root of things. And for me and my work, so a process that I have is called ancestral lineage healing. Is my ancestors keeper, and the notion is that when you can address or find the generation or the ancestor that a particular trauma started with, be that 7 generations back, 8 generations back, wherever that lives, one, you get the information that you're talking about, Tony, right? Because that's just a part of it. You understand why that pattern entered into the bloodline. And then from there, you're able to kind of start to change it, to rectify it, and then to craft a new narrative on how that will live out.
Okay.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you for that. That's man, a lot to understand there. Definitely a lot to understand. Kimberly, I don't know if you heard what I was saying, but we were talking about tracing the root cause, as you mentioned before. We just elaborating on that a little bit more, and I know you have very in-depth background when it comes down to that. So, in your background, how do you use the tools that you've developed to be able to trace and begin to understand and heal past and present?
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully the streaming is going to support this conversation. We'll ask the ancestors to hold up the internet on this end, and they'll do it. So, yeah, there are so many tools that we can use. So one of the things that I almost always start with is some form of divination. As a seer, which is one of the gifts that my ancestors have given me, and that's in my matrilineal bloodline. I always start with some form of divination, whether it's bone divination, where we literally grow the bones. You know, you've seen this. This is a part of our African traditional religion, spirit work. Or I enter the client's Akashic records. Invariably, I do a medley of all of these things, but certainly I always start with a bone divination, because that's where the ancestors, that's the language that the ancestors most commonly speak. And that's true no matter who your ancestors are. I think Dr. Latoya touched upon this earlier. One of the things I think is so important to say, even as a Black-bodied woman, which was a choice I made in this lifetime, I have ancestors who don't look like me. That's just the fact. And that's something that when we talk about ancestral trauma and grief, we often want to overlook or not consider, or we don't feel ready to confront or address. But the fact is, through my bloodline, we came through the transatlantic slave trade. So it doesn't take me very long to go back a handful of generations to see white-bodied ancestors who are also a part of my story, who are also a part of my narrative, and the pain and the struggle and all the conversations that are happening in my physical body. And so when we're talking about where to start, divination allows me to see on behalf of my clients who's in the room. which is where we have to see which ancestors are showing up, how they're feeling. Is it breaking up a lot? How they're feeling, the same ancestors, because not all ancestors are healthy. These conversations have to be had so that we can even start the conversation of who needs to be healed and what do they need.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. Andre, you want to piggyback off that one?
Yeah, it really had my head like spinning. My brain, and just I'll fill you guys in, not that it would make any difference, but I've been doing this liquid fast for the last 6 days. So today it's day 6 and I'm a little bit fuzzy. I apologize. No, Kimberly, you were just saying it. So Tony and I started this conversation a couple of months ago now when I got to be a guest on his podcast. And when I look at my own journey and my own struggles, so I call myself the Wandering Jew. And, people laugh, right? And it's supposed to be like this funny little thing. But in all honesty, like it just felt so true. And because I'm on this new journey of where I am finding out about things, and I'm on this whole new walk with God, which is kind of really where it's led me. It really made me start to think back to, well, those 40 years in the wilderness and what they went through, and is there the tie? And that's how Tony and I came to be. And it's been making me, there's this hunger for me to understand more. Hence, Tony and he wanted to understand more. I wanted to understand more. And we want to talk to other people who could help us to get to this more. So now earlier, Kimberly, unfortunately, when you had cut out, in my brain, the curiosity is, we know that healing is so important, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know that to heal who we are today is, listen, we can bleed all over people, which most people are doing, but we need to stop the bleeding, right? We need to apply the pressure and to stop the bleeding and get to the root that's causing that. But we're here talking about, it's not just this one specific root. Those roots are long and those roots are deep. They're so deep. And because this is I don't do ancestral healing, generational healing. I work in healing, in the healing of the now, and really, I guess, in the healing really of your immediate past. So I have this immense curiosity, and I'm putting this out to both of you ladies. On a scale of 1 to 10, and you can go over 10 if you think it's even stronger, do you feel, knowing the traumas and healing the traumas of your bloodline and the incredible effects that it would have on you today in your own healing? Clear? Do you understand my question? Because if you don't, I don't mind rewording it. I really want to know how important you feel it is to get to those long roots way back when, because it's really going to help you with what you're going through now.
It seems like Kimberly is.
Yeah, frozen. I think it's
okay.
I do think it's very important, and I want to elaborate it on the question just a little bit to say, time is not a line; it's a spiral. Mm-hmm. So the past, the present, and the future are all happening right now. So the reason why I think it's a 10 out of 10 is because I know for a fact anything, Andrea, you do right now is affecting your ancestors who you've been programmed to think are in the past, and also affecting your descendants you have been programmed to think are in the future. And also, just because you are in your fast, and I want to see how hard I can make your head spin, I want you to understand that you are both the ancestor and the descendant. You're it.
Okay, now blow my mind, Kimberly. Thank you.
You're it. You've been here before, so therefore, whatever experiences you've had in a past life, you also have in this physical embodiment who you know as Andrea. You're the descendant of those things. You are also the Andrea whoever's coming in your current bloodline is going to remember, oh God, there's Andrea. I saw her on a live stream. She was so wise. She was healing women over 50. She's my ancestor. I'm her descendant. So how you're playing the game now, how you're healing now, the work you choose to do right now is setting your entire bloodline up for whatever's coming, whatever has been, and whatever currently is. So it's a 10 out of 10 out of 10 for sure.
Okay.
Yes.
It's big. You're a big deal.
Sorry, I don't know if y'all heard that. So I'm currently in Brazil. And I've spent I've been here almost a month. But this last week I've been very intentional about so I think of when we're talking about ancestors, for me there's healing and there's elevation. Some people combine those things, but I do feel that there's a slight difference, right? But I've spent the last week very intentionally going around to different locations and sites and giving both healing, right? Doing healing within my own lineage for those ancestors who may have come through this particular slave port, right? And the atrocities and things that they've experienced in the way that those things are impacting me, right? And for me, the fact that I can't particularly pinpoint my ancestors who were in this space who had this trauma are affecting me now, I know that it's affecting me, right? And so the best thing that I could do in this space that I'm in, the healing, the elevation, and the upliftment, but then past my own ancestors, because I do just a lot of work around energy healing and upliftment, I've also gone to those same spaces and provided that healing and elevation. And I bring this up because, was it yesterday? Maybe yesterday or the day before, something that I had been trying to bring to fruition. I had really been working through it, and I knew that I had a block. I had a limiting belief around it. And no matter how much I had tried to, affirm myself through it, right? I had done all of the things that I know to do. I was still aware that there was a limiting energetically, that there was still remnants of this particular block that was there. And that was impacting me from moving forward in a particular area. I tell you no lie. I went to, so here in Bahia, they have the Mercado Modelo, and under that place, they say was the port of entry. And they've reopened that space, and they have like all of these lights. They're trying to basically shift the energy there. So I went there. I spent like 30 minutes in there, praying, offering light, offering elevation, canceling contracts, releasing vows, clearing energy from my body. I got home that evening. I got an email from somebody offering me something that was literally the thing that I had been trying to do. I was like, I cannot make this up. So for me, 10 out of 10, right? That was the long story to tell you 10 out of 10, because as Kimberly says, it's like, I'm living this now, but time isn't, I say time isn't real. She says it's spiral. I say it's not real, right? Past, present, and future are all happening always at the same time. And so when I am able to adjust or shift something that has happened in the past energetically, it definitely impacts me in the present.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
I want to elaborate on that. And I come from a place of humility and understanding, because I'm still a student, right? And I will always be a student of this. So, when I think about when I look at this, I would have to say it's like a 4 out of 10 for me. And the reason being, this is just me being very honest, because I am such a student of it. I don't want to miss the opportunity to learn, and better understand, because this is, again, being a male. I've just recently learned how to address my emotions and put labels on my emotions to better understand them, right? And to start the healing process, and have been on that journey ever since then. And it's been a beautiful thing, right? And I don't take nothing away from anyone. And I don't ever want to, because I don't ever want to diminish what anyone else is going through. So, and I say 3 out of, 4 out of 10, because that's out of respect. I understand my lane. I'm a men's grief coach, and by this being such a beautiful journey for me, I am still learning how to communicate with my ancestors. Unfortunately for me, when I pass away, my bloodline passes away with me. So there's no one there, no one else that comes after me, but maybe I can give something to my younger sister and my nieces, so they don't have to struggle the way that I did, right? I would rather take the blunt and the education in order to give them a clean slate. And I totally agree. We're all living the past, the present, and the future all at the same time. And our emotions or our actions will dictate what comes next. And we can choose how that comes. Is I guess for me, I would like to accept those moments that my ancestors show up with me, so I can sit down with them and be a good student to them, so I can learn. you know and for me, that is just a beautiful journey, right? And as I begin to progress and grow and understand from Kimberly and Dr. Latoya and Andrea and so many other people out there, it just helps me raise that number up, and again, it's just understanding and being humble, um in that journey, that process, right? So I can articulate it to other people that may not understand it the way that we do, or the way that Kimberly or Dr. Latoya do, to be able to bring it to them and go, have you looked at this?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Without,
Kimberly, you
Go ahead.
talked about something. Yeah, and Kimberly brought something up when she was explaining Tony, when she said, Andrew, I'm going to blow your mind now. And yeah, you totally blew my mind, Kimberly. So when you were saying, because, I like Tony, I haven't studied this, and to be able to articulate things as you and Dr. Latoya are doing so beautifully, sometimes we can't really find the words. But you were saying that the things that I'm doing now are already healing the ancestral and the work that I'm doing. So then it made me stop to think. So the people like the Tony and myself who purposely and intentionally chose to do this work. Do you hear that feedback?
I do. If anybody got a phone or something on that you're streaming through as well, it could just be reverb from your headphones as well.
Okay. All right, now it's gone. Okay. So for the healers and who intentionally, do you think that's why because when I was a teenager, that's when I chose, I wanted to be a social worker.
Yeah.
I wanted to be in the healing space. I have no, honestly, and I started working with developmentally challenged and intellectually challenged adults at the age of 15. I don't know. Just one day, I just said, well, this is what I want to do. I didn't even give it any thought. But now, with my mind blown, and I'm trying to pick up the pieces and put it back together, is that how this thing, is that how, like, all of this is kind of thread together, ladies? I don't know which one of you wants to take it away first, or if Tony, you want to talk about anything prior?
No,
take it away.
I just want to add something to that, because you said something and it really dawned on me. It was a quote that I heard from an amazing motivational speaker, and I think it ties everything in. He was talking about our dreams and our gift that we have, and the quote went, "We came to you, and it was up to you to bring us into the world. And now, since you did not take the actions, we have to die to you." And that led me to understanding the graveyard. Most of the things that we are meant to carry and understand and to put out into the world, if we do not take action and manifest those things into the world, Do our ancestors die in the grave with us? And then, and then that has to be carried, that mission has to be carried on to someone else. Because I often believe, I do believe that a lot of things that we do are repetitive. Like, we've done these things before. I've been here before. I've done this work before. I never understood. Look, ladies, look. I'm a nobody in this world. I'm just a servant to my community and the people that I'm around. And I'm humble enough to understand that. So when I say that I'm a nobody, I'm not putting myself down. I just don't put myself above anyone. I don't put myself above anyone because I know where I come from. I know where I started out of my mother's womb. And I understand my journey in this world. I understand that I have not, in the first beginning parts of my life, I may not have been the best of people. And I've paid a valuable price through loss. That's what I mean by that. I refuse to take away from someone else's opportunity to heal and get the support that they need. So if I can come in a place of humility and humble myself, that allows me to be in a moment with them, to help and walk with them in their moments of need, right? And that feeds me. It excites me to be able to do things like that. So when I look at my ancestors, I go, is this what this is about? Am I doing my part to manifest what you have given me, the knowledge, the wisdom, and through opportunity for others? Am I and through servitude, And so that's where that's for me being a male, of course I see things from a totally different perspective and things like that. But that's why I speak the way that I do, because I will forever be a student in this world, but understanding the repetitiveness and what my true purpose is, so that those things do not pass away with me. That I am doing everything I can to put it back out into the world where it belongs. Hand it over there to you ladies.
I want to say something because your ancestors are loud in my ear. We want to say to you that when you know where you truly came from, you may still use the language of I'm a nobody, but we want you to deeply understand that you're a nobody who's a somebody. And it's important that you come to make this distinction for yourself. Because at no point will it ever be true that anything that you've ever done is a disappointment to them, or is anything that you need to feel ashamed of. These experiences, every experience is valid. And this is part of the healing that has to happen. Every experience is valid. And yes, you're going to repeat things, but it's also important to remember that because you already have the awareness that you've been here before, some of the things that you feel like you're repeating are just because you've already mastered things. So to go back to Andrea's question and to dovetail into your, what you were just saying, there are clues in our ancestral lineage, and there are clues in our astrology, there are clues in our Akashic records, there are clues everywhere about who you came here to be and what you came here to do. So Andrea, likely for you, if we looked at your zodiac chart, if I pulled your chart, we could see why you chose that. Now, is that a part of what your bloodline is calling for you to do? Yes. And it's also a part of who you and God agreed from an energetic divine blueprint perspective you were going to be in this lifetime, so that you could be the optimal ancestor in this lifetime. Because the life that you lived before, and I think Dr. Latoya was talking about this when I, blitzed out of here and then came back in, you have many responsibilities, many roles that you're going to play. And so the life you lived before is informing this lifetime as well. and you've achieved certain levels of mastery, part of this ancestral trauma healing is for you specifically to remember what you already mastered and then bring that forward. And then also know what you came here to master in this lifetime and bring that forward. And that's in your zodiac chart. We find your divination. And then you can also see where they're in your zodiac chart. There's literally a house that speaks to your relationship with your ancestor. So you can look there and point and see and know, okay, this is what Kimberly came to do. You know, my expulsion from corporate America, I could have predicted if I had looked at my chart before. And then I could have maybe avoided, getting Chernobyl out of there, and I could have just walked out a little more gracefully, but that's not really how it went. But also the work that I've done and the work that we're all doing, just the fact that we're having this conversation, and this is what I want to really reinforce for you. The fact that you're just having this conversation is ancestral healing in action.
Yes.
I like to emphasize with people that in the mundane, there's no distinction. I think this is also what Dr. Latoya was talking about. We don't make these bifurcated, manufactured distinctions in this realm because we know the ancestors, their view, their perspective of the world is what we'll call animus mundi. For them, there's no distinction between the spiritual realm and the material realm. It's all one thing. And so when I'm having a cup of coffee in the morning, I have a ritual called Coffee with the Ancestors that I created. When I'm having coffee in the morning with the ancestors, I pour a cup for me, I pour a cup for them. We have a conversation just like the one we're having now. I'm healing. I'm doing the work. If I'm in my kitchen cooking, I'm laughing with my mother's mother who's on the other side of the veil because I'm not following the recipe because that's how she cooked. But my mom would have kittens if she saw me not following the recipe. So my grandmother and I are cracking up. I'm healing. That's healing in action.
Wow.
Everything you do when you just is the work. Mm-hmm. You're the work. This is why Dr. Latoya was able to go to this sacred place and sit there for 30 minutes and pray her heart out and make a quantum shift in her entire timeline and shift things for her. That's the work. Her bloodline will never be the same. It took 30 minutes. That's the work.
Wow.
Yes. I want to say, so I'm a firm believer that, when we bring groups together, like no matter how much our thinking mind thinks that we can curate the perfect amalgamation or the perfect mix, right? We never know. And the fact that I am sitting here on a panel with another Black woman who, one does this ancestral healing work, one does the work of the Akashic records, right? Like that we have this similar language and this similar framework and this similar mindset is just really, for me, one, confirmation, right? That I'm always in the right place at the right time. And that two, this is the work, right? I think one of the things, or what I wanted to point out from your conversation, and Kimberly just spoke to this perfectly, was I perceive my life is a living prayer, right? Everything that I do is in relation to elevation, upliftment, manifestation. Like there is no separation between, and now I am doing the work that I've been called to do, and now I'm living my life, right? My life is the work. And so from an ancestral standpoint, I started by saying I am the representation of all of those who have come before me. So for me, that means every time I am doing something, it is also healing and elevating my ancestors, because I don't have to they are not separate from me. They are me. They are with me 24 hours a day. I couldn't cut them out if I tried, right? So when I am doing the work to raise my consciousness through reading, through journaling, through whatever that is, all of that is impacting not only me in this embodied reality, but it is impacting the embryos and the cells and the eggs and all of that stuff that I have in me. It is impacting the energies of those ancestors who have come before me. And that then impacts the larger community, right? Because as we shift, then we are also creating shifts of those who are around us. And I think that understanding that we are not separate from the work take the burden off of I have to do this thing. Oftentimes people get stuck, or they don't, it becomes too much, or I don't understand, I don't want to do it, I need to learn more, because we feel like we're ill-equipped. But if we just shift that and say, wait, I'm doing the work with what I do, the actions seem smaller, they seem more easily digestible, and then in that you can continue to always grow in whatever that work is.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love that. I definitely love that. Wow. So, wow.
Yeah.
The question would be, or my next thought about this would be, because it did lead me along a path, something that another avenue that I started going down was understanding the soul work, right? And I often joke about this when I tell people, you got to have one-on-one time with your soul. But people never really understand when I say that, I actually really mean that. Like I learned how to sit with my soul and go, let me know what you need from me. Do you need me to let you go out into the universe? And so therefore, I can enjoy this human experience that we're embodied upon. But also, it also helped me pose the question, and I'm glad that you mentioned this, Dr. Latoya, about the subconscious mind, right? So that's another avenue that I've often veered down to better understand how do we operate within a universe, past, present, and future, right? And how does it all sit in the moment in these moments that we will experience moving forward? So and I started chunking it up. Like I said, there's no such thing as a bad day. You have challenging moments. So if I can look at every moment that's challenging, extract the information, I can then allow that to go like the wind and carry that information and understand that in that moment I'm a student, but in the next moment I'm a messenger. I can pass that on. So it's like a passage through. But that's where the subconscious mind has taken me. But then I started thinking, there's another avenue to this, which is the unconscious mind, which is infinite wisdom, infinite energy, and I began to allow myself to travel in that aspect, right? And want to connect with other people like myself, to better understand, right? To better serve, and to give without expectations, but also to honor, like as you both said, the ancestors that live inside me, inside my blood ties, to go, how do I honor you more? I will sacrifice myself, this body, for you, in order for you to have the peace that you need, so I can in turn have the peace that I require in order to continue. But that's just my thought, though. That's just my thought, and understanding how all of these different things connect. So I often find it very fascinating, like understanding that I've always been a fighter my whole entire life. So who else in my ancestral lineage was a fighter? Who was the warriors? Because I have uncles, I have aunties, I have my sister, I have all of these different individuals that was in my family, and I go, wow, we all carry something similar. But I'm a fighter. It's like I don't run from anything. You put something, come on. So now it goes, I wonder where that came from. sort of, so I leave that thought out there. And anyone who wants to backpack over there, or if you have any questions as well, please put those out there.
Latoya, you want to take that one first?
Okay. It's hard to tell because your screen, I was like, wait, normally she jumps in and then I start talking. So I was waiting. I think what was resonating for me as you were talking, and this idea of the soul. I call it a soul-led day, right? So it's like giving the soul permission to lead, and then trusting that the soul is going to lead me in the right way, right? But why, for me, right, there is my soul life and my soul family and my soul memories and all of that stuff, and then there's my ancestral being, which are not necessarily the same. Right. And so what I mean by that is, at soul level, I continue to come back, right? I am retaining all of the memories, all of the things that have happened to me, incarnation after incarnation after incarnation. In this incarnation, I chose to be born into the ancestral lineage that I'm a part of. Probably because there were some things within the lineage that I felt like I could heal. One. And two, because there that, or experiences that I knew that if I incarnated into this particular lineage, I would experience. And I needed those experiences for my soul growth. So when I'm thinking about, those two things together, I often like to be clear with people and clients, because particularly when people are coming from traditional ancestral, traditional African religious spiritual systems, the idea that we keep incarnating into the same ancestral lineage is high and really prevalent. And I'm not here to discount that or discourage that. I believe you believe what you believe, right? But if I'm looking at it from the soul standpoint and the ancestral standpoint, then I have to question, why did I make the choice to incarnate into this particular ancestral lineage? And for me, that question and the answers that come from that question is the golden ticket, right? Because if I can understand why I made the choice to incarnate into this particular lineage, then I can not look at the struggle as a struggle, right? I can understand that I am going through this because there is something on the other side I'm supposed to get from it, and then figure out what that is and then implement it, right? Or I can say, again, like, what am I to gift to this particular lineage so that this lineage can move on when I'm no longer here? And that's the end of my thought, because it just went away. But I'm gonna end it. I'm gonna end it with that one.
That was a lot. Yeah, that's beautifully said. I agree with everything. This is like the mutual Kimberly Latoya agreement show.
I'm looking forward to that show. So
because I too make that distinction. It goes a little bit back to what I said earlier. Like, we have ancestors who don't look like us. I know for a fact that I chose to be in this body at this time as a Black woman. That was a distinct choice, because the mission that I came here to accomplish requires this continence, this kind of experience. Part of my work is to restore the balance of power between the divine feminine and the sacred masculine. Well, who in this embodiment, in this, time in history, has been more put upon than the Black woman? I'll wait. Nobody. So that this choice was a very divine specific choice. In other lifetimes, I've chosen to be a white male. I know that for a fact because I was really successful in an environment that is dominated by white men. And I have no qualms about that. Sometimes when people hear me say that, they're like, oh God, she's crazy. But that too is okay with me, because I make space for people to believe whatever it is we're required to believe, do whatever it is we came here to do. And I happen to believe that with all my heart and soul, that we make specific choices so that we can get done what we promised God we were going to do. And so to come back to this idea of what does my soul want? I think that's one of the most important questions, as Latoya said, and sitting down and having a real meaningful, I call it an interview with the soul, sitting down, like literally writing down the questions. I have one of my degrees is in journalism. So I have this kind of inquisitor mindset. So literally sitting down and interviewing your soul, interviewing yourself, interviewing the past versions of yourself, even going so far as to talk to the future versions of yourself, which is something I do with my clients all the time. Because Tony, for you, like coming back to the conversation that you have led us through, what if you were to spend some time on one of those soul-led days? I love that concept. And said, today I'm going to talk to my future self. And I'm going to ask myself, I'm going to go 10 years out, 20 years out, 5 years out, doesn't matter. And I'm going to ask questions about, who are you now? And here are the things that in my current version of Tony, here are the things that I feel like I desire. Maybe some things that haven't come together yet. Here are the things that I want to heal from. That version of you 3 years out, 5 years out has already done it. So ask him, what did you do? And then I love reverse engineering things. So then reverse engineer the steps so that instead of it taking 5 years, 10 years, it can happen in 30 minutes, like Dr. Latoya did. Right. These are the keys. One of the things that I really like to emphasize with people is, just because ancestral trauma has lived in these systems, in our generational systems for hundreds of years, does not mean at all that it needs to take an equal amount of time to heal it. You can do this. I've sat with clients in this very room and healed years of trauma in 90 minutes, and it's sustainably gone forever. You can do this for yourself as well. One of the things is to do what Dr. Latoya said. Stop making the weird bifurcation between this is me being spiritual and this is me being, doing my work. Your ancestors don't think of the world that way, and you deserve to not have to see the world that way either.
That's very freeing. That right there, what both of you ladies have just shared, that is breaking some chains. And when we talk about the keys, it's like truly the keys to the kingdom, right? This kingdom of knowledge, this kingdom of healing, of creating this balance and this harmony. And I have to tell you, first of all, I want to say thank you, because it was a big release for me. I don't know, Tony, I'd love your thoughts on this, but hearing about the work that I'm doing has been healing my bloodline. And the work that I'm doing now is helping to heal my children. And if I'm blessed to become a grandparent or great grandparent, and when I'm gone, and how my bloodline will continue on through my children. And that, honestly, some people might hear that and go, that's a little bit woo-woo, but right? Because I think people think things are woo-woo when they can't wrap their head around a concept, right? It just seems so abstract to them. It's like, how do we make sense of this? But this is what we're doing here today, because honestly, Tony and I came with this deep desire to have these conversations because we were selfish and we wanted to have these conversations and meet with incredible people who could help us break this down, help us to unpack this, and help others that are going to be listening to this and watching this, so that we can continue doing the work that we've been called by God to do. And now we can bring this with and let this, and it's almost like that pay it forward. And I touch one person, and then I touch one person, and so on and so on and so on. So honestly, like, I'm really just, I feel like there's that. The Bitmoji? The surprise. That's okay. Tony.
Try going on mute and then coming back on.
I'm gonna do that.
Said it as well. And thank you, ladies, for that. A lot to understand and to take in. And I love that. I'm like a sponge ball with this stuff. So first, before I say anything, I want to thank everybody who's been tuning in on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, all of these different platforms. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you guys have any questions for us or for the ladies up here, please put them in the comment section. Thank you guys for tuning in and rocking with us for this long. It means a lot to us. Thank you so very much. And to kind of add something to what you were saying, Kimberly, that was one of the first things I did once I figured out my purpose in this world, in this path of understanding grief and falling in love with it. Right? You know, and I often say this to people, and it kind of it's funny because I often tell people, I say grief is my lover. The rest of it is my mistress. I love with this thing, right? Because I love everything about it. I love being able to unpack it. It's this whole spaghetti mess of understanding. I love walking with people, helping them untie all of it and get on a path to where they can start to begin their path of healing and understanding and coming to a place of acknowledgement. Most people call it acceptance. I say it's a place of acknowledgement, but to dive deeper into it, once I figured out that I did do that work and I went to the future self, right? After I began to go to my past self from the child, that was molested, and then the child who was abused, and then the child who was abandoned and neglected, the one who's betrayed and homeless, and all of these different things. There was so much that I had to unpack. Then once I came to where I am in the present moment, I said, you know what? Let me go see where my future self is. If I do have the ability to do that, do I have the ability to go to my future self? And I began to envision myself where I wanted to be. And you're absolutely right. I began to step into that. And I would have to say that there was things that I didn't see. I was okay with that, right? Because what it did, it expanded and opened and said, oh, we know that you asked for this right here, but thank you for trusting us. And we're going to give you so much more in abundance. And it was just one of those things. I began to look at my future self, and I started looking at myself being on stage, talking with people, writing books, meeting people I never even met before, right? And it goes back to a term that I heard from someone else when he said there are people talking about you in rooms that you've never been in before. And I would say it was absolutely correct, right? So, being here in this present moment, understanding the work, having a better understanding of the work, right? It has been so rewarding to be able to give back to my ancestors and help them heal. To be able to be present and have these moments with everyone, and to be able to give back to other people, like everyone who's tuning in on us, and to listen, look at their comments and things like that. Like, for me, this is a huge gift.
Yeah.
To the audience, and I can't thank you guys enough for the information and the willingness to come in and share your knowledge with us. This is totally beautiful. So yeah, that's what I have.
Can I offer one additional thing? It just popped up. Going back to Andrea's earlier question of where we rate this, and I said a 10 out of 10. And then we brought in this idea of the soul. And I think another thing that's really important to understand is that when we are looking at different energies, right? So we're going to consider the ancestral aspects to be an energy. When we're talking about the soul aspects, that's an energy, right? If you deal with angels, whatever it is, they all are different. And in this kind of larger cosmos of holding the world together, all of the energies play a very specific role. And I think, Tony, you just triggered in me this notion of understanding, from my perspective, the role of the ancestors, always say, is about the preservation of the ancestral lineage, right? That is their job. That's what they care about. That's what they're concerned about. They are team, let's help Tony, because we want to make sure that our lineage is strong and thriving and continues to continue. right? And if we understand that their end goal is always for preservation of the lineage, it also empowers us to say they want to help, right? It's like shifting this mindset of, are they going to help me? Will they help me? Do they want to heal? Are they going to go on this journey with me? Absolutely. Every single time, 100% of the time, because the goal is for preservation of the lineage. The other thing that's important to remember here, though, is that sometimes, because their goal is the preservation of the lineage and they lived in a particular time frame, sometimes their ideas of what is safe or what is healthy or what is thriving, right, all of those things are not necessarily congruent with where we are here in 2024, right, or whatever year we're doing this work. And this is where I think I'm really big on empowerment and making sure that the person living this life, is very clear that I am the agent, right? And when working with clients, that you are the agent, and it's your job to create the landscape or create the paradigm. And then, because your ancestors really just care about preservation, as long as you were giving them, you know what? I know that we used to not go to school, right? Or I know that we were afraid to leave the house because when we stepped outside, there was brutal attacks and things like that. But today, it's okay for me to achieve success in work. It's okay for me to be on stages talking. It's okay for me to have these $1 million contracts. It's okay. And I need you to release the aspects of you that is carrying that fear, that says that that's not okay, because right now this is the direction we're going.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to frame it in the, they're going to go where you go if
Right.
if you take the agency to put that energy out there, to set that intention.
Yeah.
Understood. I would like to elaborate on that, and then I have a question. I just copied it from over here on Instagram, but I want to say I am very receptive of everything that has been given to me. Look, I'm open to it. It took me a long time to get here because life had taught me something different. Like I wasn't worthy of the things because of what the things I've had to do. But then I realized that, I don't regret anything that I've ever had to do. I survived. It was the thought of living that held me back. And understanding the living was what I had to accept. That it was okay for me to go and be successful, to become an author, to become a speaker, to start a business, to have these success, to generate wealth for my family, so they don't have to struggle, and understanding that these things were meant for me, and go, I accept wholeheartedly what you want to give me, and willing to go out there with no fear of anything, but to walk in those moments that you have already prepared for me, because maybe I don't understand, but I'm willing to let you guide me, right? And just to be free in those moments, free in this journey, free in that process. See, it goes back to something that I've learned. You have to fall in love with the process. See, a lot of people don't really understand that, and the depth that comes along with that. When I tell people fall in love with the process, it's because I come up from a place to where I used to be afraid of it, but now I look at the process and I go, wow, I now understand what that is. And if you try to explain it to someone, it will blow their mind because it's so simple that they will overthink it. Right. So, and so I just wanted to add on to that. Like, I appreciate that. Right. Because, sometimes we do get into those moments and we forget. We forget to allow ourselves to be accepting of the gifts that is going to be handed to us. Right. And it's just one of those things. It takes a long time to break through those walls and things like that, especially if you've been beat by life or beat by people. Life will make you put up walls, and so you don't see what's been handed to you. You're afraid to accept the gifts and you're afraid to tell yourself that you are worthy. You're afraid to say, I deserve this.
Yeah.
Because for one, we have years and years of people telling us that we don't.
Mm-hmm.
And how so late we believe those things. So, and that's what I mean about breaking those chains, breaking the chains from the ancestors, but breaking the chains of our minds, and going, yes, I do deserve this. I am worthy of everything that you're trying to give me, but also being appreciative of it as well, because these are all different things. Although, and I totally agree, and I'm still a student of understanding that these things were given to me before, right? So it's still, I'm a work in progress. I'll be the first one to tell you, look, I'm a work in progress, but I don't mind the work. I don't mind the work. Now, before I let you guys elaborate on that, I do have a question from one of the listeners, and I just want to get your thoughts on this, and how we look at, because I think there's a tie that comes along with that. The people that are closest to us, I believe that we have met before, right? Along this, saying in our ancestral journeys, and things like that. So I'm gonna put that out there. It's a good question. Whomever want to elaborate on that?
I'll wade into this. I love this question. It actually dovetails nicely into what the conversation you and LaToya were just having. The people closest to us, in my belief, are our soul tribe. And oftentimes we have been here many times before. Like, I look at myself and my daughter. We have had many divine agreements over the lifetime. And my daughter and I couldn't be closer. I'm just going to say, for the record, and all of YouTube, I am the best freaking mother on the planet to this child. No one could do it better. Nobody. And that's because I'm in devotion to being the best freaking mother on the planet to this being. Has it always been easy? No. But it's because these relationships, I have an understanding that these relationships with whom, these intimate relationships, these family relationships are designed to be our best teachers. Mm-hmm. This is the PhD level soul healing, ancestral healing. This is where we get to be the work at all times. And I believe that the reason why it can appear to be harder is because you may be the first one or the one in your family who is signed up to be the chain breaker.
Mm. Mm. So you're disrupting it. You're disrupting
the system. You're disrupting the system. And everyone agreed that, you, Andrea, we're going to disrupt the system. There's really no surprise. Like, if you go into the spiritual realm and you travel back to the conversation where you all sat down at the table with God and you said, all right, I'll do it. I got it this round. Everyone in your family knows that you agreed to do it. They also forgot that they agreed that you were going to do it, or they are playing their role so specifically so that you can do your role so beautifully that it feels harder. Mm-hmm. I can remember my daughter's dad and I are divorced, and it was like a rough go. I'll just say that. Like, we landed the plane hard. And I remember going to God and saying, why is this so hard? We have this beautiful family together. Why is it so difficult? And I sat down and went into a shamanic journey, because that's what shamans do. Why stay on this plane trying to figure it out when you can go into the astral? So I head off into the astral. I sit down and I reunited with the being who is my ex-husband. And I saw us having a conversation. And this is true for all family. So I saw us having a conversation where I was like, listen, we're going to go back in these bodies and I'm going to need you to be this guy. And he literally was like, I don't want to do that. You're going to hate me. And I was like, I will, But look here in the time spiral, I wake up right here. And then I remember that I don't hate you. I remember that I love you. But if you don't do this, if you don't show up like this for me, I won't wake up. And I have to wake up because I have to be Kimberly and Fuzzy and Gonyama. And you're a big part of that. And he was like, okay, but you have to remember that you really have to wake up because we've done this before. And I don't want you hating me an entire lifetime. This is the work of the ancestors. This is the work of you as the ancestor and the descendant. This is, and every single one of us in our families is having this experience at some level. My mother is having this experience. She's remembering things because I'm her child. She's remembering things because my daughter is her granddaughter. My father is having his own version of this. And so what we have to understand is in our family of origin, everyone's doing it in a different way and at different levels of awareness and awakening, if you like that term. And we all are just in it together. And so there's some of us who are called to just be more gracious about the process so that the other person can remember who they truly are. We are all, as Ram Dass just says, walking each other back home. Mm-hmm. It can be when you're in tight quarters, and you're seeing everyone's process and it's messy, and you're like, God, you are really setting that up, or you're really making this work with me. We have to remember that it's the friction in these close relationships that's, if you're making a sword, that requires, iron sharpens iron, or pressure makes the diamond, whichever one of those you love the best. And so if you can just bring that perspective to, that's what these relationships are here to help me do. Everything is about my becoming and my agreement to help the people closest to me become who they came here to become. It does relieve some of the angst that can be baked into these relationships. And the last thing I'll say about that too is just because you're kin doesn't mean you have all the same ancestors.
Right.
So you've got other, I've got ancestors. Like I'll just use my mother and I, and we are closer than close, but we don't have all the same ancestors because I'm also Lloyd's daughter. So sometimes these ancestors are having conversations and they're like, we never liked Margaret in the first place, or whatever they're trying to do. I'm here, in the middle, like, wait a minute, I love everybody. Can't we all just get along? So all of that's happening simultaneously. And if you don't have the awareness to step outside of the system and just look at it from what I call divine mind, or if you can give yourself that grace and say, I'm going to look at this from an aerial view and see that the ancestors are all trying to work it out. And then what's my role here? Mm-hmm. What did I come to do? What's my contribution? Mm-hmm. If you look at it from that perspective, then it really does just get a little bit easier. And as Latoya said earlier, take some of the pressure off too. You're just like, okay, this is what we're all doing. It's okay. But that's why it can be a little bit harder.
That's very
like piggyback off the question real quick, and then we'll move forward. I know people got things to do today, and I'm really loving this conversation. Man, this is such a beautiful thing. Thank you. Anybody want to piggyback off the question that we had? Real quick.
Were you going to say something, Andrea?
No, take it away. Take it away.
Oh, okay. No, I think so. My father died in October, and I was his primary caregiver. So he lived with me. I have two daughters. So we were all in the house in this space together, right? I also was the primary caregiver for my mother who died. So it's like, one, I had to say, okay, why am I in this position, right? So clearly there were some choices I made prior to coming to this lifetime that said I was going to take on that role. But this idea of grief, I remember feeling judged when I didn't grieve to the extent that people expected me or believed that I should grieve, right? And it made me question, like I literally was like, okay, wait, are you suppressing your feelings? So I had to ask myself, am I suppressing my feelings? Am I really in touch? Am I living in the now? Like, am I honoring where I am? I had to really go through that process. And what I realized was that because I understood my assignment as it related to my dad, and because I understood my dad's assignment as it related to his life and to me, there was nothing really for me to grieve in that, right? He had done his job. He came, he checked all of the boxes that he said he was going to do, and he made the conscious choice that his time on this plane was done. Mm-hmm. And me as his daughter, I did my thing in supporting him in being able to release his plane to the best of my ability. And so I felt like, for me, holding on to that, one, it traps the energy in a particular way, right? Mm-hmm. As opposed to really allowing his spirit and his soul to leave without tethering. It brings them, it holds them in this particular way, right? And it tethers me to that in a particular way. And what I came to, like, so then just watching everybody kind of move through that process, I came to the understanding, and the same similar with my mom, right? I believe that the people who were grieving the hardest were the people who had unsaid things that they needed to say, who had guilt around not showing up during the time when he was there and all of the stuff was happening, right? And it was really just this mixed bag of emotions that they hadn't dealt with as it related to this person who was no longer here. And because I had dealt with my stuff, right? I had dealt with it while he was here. I didn't have that same relationship with the energy of grief.
Yep.
Andre, you want to piggyback off of that?
Well, first of all, that makes so much sense, Dr. Latoya. And I still feel like I have that emoji's face on. My eyes are like coming out of my head and my mouth is in the circle, because there's so much that was said, and all of this is just so beautifully being put together to create a level of understanding. I forgot. It's so funny, Kimberly, when you said it, we don't all come with the same ancestrals, the same ancestors. And I'm born into a family that then became blended through my mother and my father. Both had been married before. So even though I grew up in a home with my brother and my sister from birth, they come with their own. My mother comes with, and it's a beautiful needlepoint. And it all leads to the middle, right? It's dispersed, but it starts here. And I'm thinking to the question that was asked for us on YouTube, and I'm thinking of my own experience of grief with my own siblings. And now it's making sense. We have had our own, like when my father passed away, who had adopted my brother and sister when they were little. The three of us had our own unique journey with grief. And then when it came to our mother, who was all of our mother, like once again, we all had this individual, unique journey, because I had my own traumas still from my other things, and my sister had hers, and my brother had his, and then it's all coming together. And for some reason, listen, family dynamics and the people that we're closest to, I mean, that's a whole other topic. That's a whole other show for all of us to start unpacking why those things are. But But to sum it up into the reference of where we are today, after talking about ancestral trauma and healing it, we don't all come with the same lineage. It's diverted at different places on our journey. But there is this question that I've been just salivating on asking, going back in the conversation, Dr. Latoya, to when you had said something about, I believe it was you. It could have been you, Kimberly. And honestly, ladies, I apologize, because it could have been a combination of the both of you of what you were talking about. But my question is this. how much of a block can ancestral trauma cause for us here today in our own life and in this journey that we're presently here in this 3D reality of 2024?
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah.
Like for me with money, for me with my finance, I'll be specific. So for me with finances, we always hear about these blockages, and I look at my brother and sister, and they've been on a very different journey in terms of finances themselves. And I think about my parents and with their finances, but I really want the buck to stop here, man, because I don't want this. What's that expression we talked about on the last show, Tony? The sins of the father fall upon the children. Well, I don't want, I really, really want this to stop here. And I'm sure that as I'm here with the four of us are here together, I'm not the only one, because I know that people that are watching this and are going to watch this are going to want to know that too. So I think we need to give them a key. Thanks.
Okay. All right.
Hey, the doors are open. Please, but anyone who wants to elaborate on it, please, by all means.
Gosh, this really is a topic unto itself.
It is.
Around money and true ancestral wealth and spiritual money. I teach on financial sovereignty and true freedom. So something Dr. Latoya said a moment ago, I'll weave into this. One, our ancestors sometimes inadvertently block us. They don't. I had a very specific experience for some time around visibility. Even though I have been in corporate America and on stages and traveled the entire world literally for many years, when it came time for me to show up as the CEO of my own company, there was something veiled. And it took me quite some time to figure it out. And finally, whatever. It took me a minute, more than a minute. And I sat with my ancestors and I said, what are we doing here? You put me here. I know you put me here. Why do I feel some measure of fear wading out into the world as myself? And they're like, oh, we cloaked you. You have an invisibility cloak. We put that there for your protection. It's been there the whole time. But when you were corporate Barbie Kimberly, you didn't even notice because you weren't even your most authentic self. So it didn't matter. But now you're going to show up as true Kimberly, and we veiled you. And I was like, okay, that's fantastic. Really appreciate the help, but I got to get out into the world and do this thing. So we had to do a measure of work, some unweaving to allow me to feel safe in the world, especially because astrologically embodied safety is one of my top values. So it's really kind of a 1-2 combination of things when we talk about how are the ancestors blocking? Are they even aware they're blocking? Do they understand why they're blocking? Do you understand where the block is coming from? Is it for your protection or is it something else? Because then that leads us down the path of how to address it. And especially people, wealth is such a big, of course, money. What's it good for? Absolutely nothing. But we got to have it. So you got to talk. One of the things I advise, just step one, is to sit down with the answers and be like, look, it's 2024. I need to be rich. Okay. It's kind of like what Latoya was saying earlier. They may not understand. Like my ancestors, rich to them was cowrie shells. We don't deal in cowrie shells no more. I need actual fiat money in my bank so I can do what you are calling me to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had these conversations with them to say, I'm going to do exactly what we need to do to heal this bloodline, to show up, to do this work, to continue this bloodline. I'm all in. Listen, I came to live a certain lifestyle. That's the agreement.
Right.
I made some agreements. I agreed to come back here. You agreed to make me rich. We agreed to do this together. It's very important that, like as Dr. Latoya was saying, you step into your agency with your ancestors and with the powers who walk with you. You're here by divine agreement. And if one of the things that you deeply desire, and not everyone desires it, but if one of the things that you deeply desire is to experience wealth in this lifetime, it's because you're meant to experience wealth in this lifetime.
Right.
But you do have to stand up and say, listen, I'm going to heal this for us, but I need the money, right? We need to create the manifested thing. And I know you know how to do it. Help me do it. And this is also what I'm going to do with it. Because you have to understand, money is energy. It's already right here. It can either be created nor destroyed. You're just requesting your share.
Right.
And I want you to think about giving the money a job, because money doesn't want to just hang around you. It wants to circulate. So sometimes I tell people, you need to tell your money what you want it to do. Okay, ancestors, I would like $100,000, and this is what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to take 50 and put it in my account. I'm going to take 30 and improve the house. I'm going to take the rest of it and I'm going to put it in a trust fund or whatever. And also, I know super spiritual people are going to be like, what is she talking about? But I'm going to say it anyway. Money doesn't really care. Like money isn't judgy. People who have money can be judgy, but money itself is not judgy. You just need to delegate it. So if you say, listen, money, I want to take the whole $100,000 and take myself on vacation. Money's like, girl, go. But you have to do the thing that you told money you're going to do. Because money also operates from a place of integrity. Right.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes.
So you want to piggyback off that real quick?
I think that she said everything there.
Yeah.
I mean, she said it all perfectly. You know, I think I do a free challenge called Breaking Ancestral Chains. And particularly, I do a few different editions, but one is tied to money. And in that one, we're looking at the narratives and the stories that people have that have been passed down to them through the generations that they're living and operating from, right? A lot of the ones, and this, the thing is, we don't recognize when we're living a program, right?
Right.
We think, nope, I'm making this choice and I'm doing this thing. But the way that programs work is, you know, a particular trigger happens and enter happens. And once that program starts, the program will run until you bring something in to disrupt or put in a new program. And so oftentimes I find that when there are money issues or money blockages, that there is a program around our belief around what money is, how money is, you know, how it's supposed to show up and operate for us. And when we start to look at that, that's when we're able to change our relationship with money. And really, I think understanding the idea that money is energy, it is not the root of evil, right? Right? What the choices that people make with money are the root of evil, right? We don't have to work hard or grind or all of the things. And the simplest thing for me is like, just think back to when you were a child. What's his name? T. Harv Eker has my favorite book. I probably listened, because I don't read this thing. Audible is my friend, right? Has my favorite thing as it relates to kind of reprogramming the subconscious mind and understanding money. But in that, it's really about like, think about what was your parents' story or the people that you grew up around, because we didn't all grow up with our parents, right? But the people that were your caregivers or where you first started to understand and learn money, what was the narrative that you were given around that? And then if you can just simply allow yourself to go back to that point and then say, how am I living this now? Then most times you can figure out why you're having an issue attracting or keeping money. That's a very simple one to do.
Yeah.
I love that, ladies. I love that.
Definitely love that. I'm gonna make a comment, then we'll wrap up. I think what really dove me into understanding the aspect of riches is understanding and defining what it meant for me.
Mhm.
And what had happened. I lost my son at the age of 8 years old, and so I remember my father and my younger brother had already passed away. My mother passed away 2 years after the son, and I remember sitting there and this thing came to me. It was saying your biggest riches are here at the table waiting for you when you get here. And that was from my grandmother. And just like like yourselves, and I understand that lineage. My great great grandmother was a shaman, so I come from really really strong women in my family,
Mm.
and I adore that strength and understanding where she came from, and understanding because I met her when I was younger, and she used to teach me these lessons and things like that, and I was always there paying attention, right? Like, and I understood her journey of being a slave, understanding her role in the tribe and all of these different things. But it was what she carried with us that always instilled with me. She was like, baby boy, your biggest pressure, your biggest riches will always be where you place them when we leave here. So there's always a room and a table set for you. And I've always looked at it from that aspect. That's why I never really asked for a whole lot, although it has been given to me. The more I give, the more I get. And I don't really know what to do with it all. So I constantly give it away. And then it constantly comes back. I'm like, hey, I'm trying to give it away. They were like, yeah, but you need a little. I was like, look, I have everything I need. It's already there. They were like, no, you need this right here in order to, okay, I'll make an agreement with you, right? I'll do it and everything, but I still don't know what to do with it all. But it's like I see my gifts already there waiting for me, and they help guide me. Like my son is always going, even right now, my son is going, Daddy, remember when I was telling you this? I go, yeah, Bubba. So, and I think those blessings, that wealth can be a tool and be held in the eye of the beholder as well, right? Because this world, like you said, Kimberly, we're just walking each other home. And I have a philosophy for myself. And it took me a long time to understand this as well, understanding my role as well. Like we all have a different role. And my sister hates when I say this, but I go, I'm the seasonal one. I am here when you need me until you don't need me anymore. And then have to go where I am called the most. I am the seasonal one. I do not get the opportunity to have an attachment to people, places, or things. My job is to walk you to your next destination because I'm excited to see where your journey takes you. Then I have to go somewhere else. And I believe that we all have a role. And I believe that that's my role when I encounter other individuals. I'm not going to take it personally if you have to leave me. Trust me, I used to, but now I don't. Right? I understand that attachment is just not for me. I can love you without being intimate with you. I can love your heart. I can love your soul. And I can enjoy my moment with you without taking away from what you have to offer to someone else.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Selflessly. They go, man, thank you for allowing me to walk with you to this destination. I will see you. Hopefully, if I don't see you in this lifetime, maybe I'll see you in the next one. And I think that's where I hold my wealth.
Yeah, that's a
precious thing. Your time is precious to me, right? And I want to make sure that I am honoring your time as you allow me to walk with you. And again, that's just my thoughts on it and everything, and understanding my role in life. Not saying that it's for everyone else or anyone, it's understanding self and understanding why I was put here, my purpose,
Yeah.
you know, and enjoying these things, these conversations and things like that. But you know, that's just me.
I think that's amazing. I offer an assessment called the Energy Leadership Index, and at the top of that stack is the creator. And what you're describing, I'm experiencing as the creator mindset. It's something I call divine detachment. I love you. I'm I can sincerely love you, and I can also appreciate that nothing belongs to me. I'm everything, and so therefore I need no thing. I need no thing because I have everything. This is the divine perspective.
Right.
And when I hear you say that, it's also that shamanically speaking, that perspective when you realize you're everything and nothing simultaneously is one of the markers of being a shaman. So I'm just saying, Tony,
You know what? You keep that to yourself. No, I
out
definitely
there.
appreciate that. You know, that's honorable. Thank you
Yeah.
so very much. Anyone else want to piggyback off there? I know you guys.
Well, I have just something that I really need to share because what I really like, if you were to say, okay, Andrea, what are your couple of takeaways from today's conversation from class today? Because I really felt like a
Right?
student and like,
I was like,
yeah, Tony, like,
got
I
the
mean, awesome.
book.
Like, how great is this for us? Honestly, I love it. So, what I'm really the biggest takeaway that I get from the two of you ladies is I got this from you, Tony, a couple months ago when we initially started the conversation, but it was really solidified for me today, here and now. Is that our ancestors are always willing to share their knowledge. And if we, Kimberly, when you were saying about your morning coffee, you know, and that you pour one for your ancestors, like I got chills. Okay, honestly. So that really is one of my biggest takeaways is that to embrace our lineage, to embrace it. Maybe sometimes we don't. I'll speak for myself. I don't want to make it about anybody else. Could be the fear of not knowing what's gonna come up, what I'm gonna have to hear, what I'm gonna have to deal with. But if I just welcome them and embrace them, and I want to thank both of you ladies because man, I got to still put my head back together because it's blown. It's blown. It's blown. It looks okay, but yeah, I got to put it back together. Today was phenomenal, Tony.
Yes, yes. And
Yeah.
as we begin to wrap this up and everything, I want to extend a huge thank you to these beautiful ladies to come on and share their knowledge with us and help us understand um, how to heal these ancestral traumas, right? Breaking those chains, you know. And so before I let you guys go, how can people find you, Kimberly?
Okay, so I'm in all the usual places, right? So I'm on Facebook as Kimberly and Fezzi Ngonyama Basket, and I'm on Instagram as Kimberly and Fezzi Ngonyama.
Awesome, awesome. Dr. Latoya?
I am at Chi Healing Institute. So CHI on Facebook and Instagram. Chi Healing Institute is where you can find me.
Awesome, awesome. Now, hold on. Before I let you go, Kimberly, you have something that you just did. You just did a masterclass, didn't you, on this very thing
No.
program? Or was it you, Dr. Latoya?
It may have been me. So I mentioned I do the free challenge, which is breaking ancestral chains. So if you want to get on the waiting list, because it just wrapped up, so currently it's not open, but it's chiancestors.com/money. And it is a 4-day challenge. Each day we're looking at a different aspect with the idea of identifying, well, coming into awareness, identifying, rewriting the story, and then integrating a new action plan to help you shift those ancestral traumas around money. And then I also offer classes in, it's called Connecting with the Ancestors. But it is basically
Connecting with the ancestors.
right. You know, who needs to make it complicated, right? Name it what it is. Call it what it is. But it basically teaches you how to, for me, it's about demystifying. There's so much stigma around who the ancestors are, what they are, all of this stuff. And although I have a spiritual background, I am also scientific. Like those two things just kind of come together for me naturally. And so my perspective when I teach and when I share typically brings those things together. Team meet people where they are, and then that allows them to go wherever it is that they need to be. So if you go to my website, it's chicourses.com. You'll see the link for that class.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Andre, where can people find you?
Oh, well, like I am like Kimberly and all the usual places that I just roam. And that is on Instagram as Andrea Brunswick, on LinkedIn as Andrea Brunswick, but on Facebook, it's Andrea Julia Brunswick.
Awesome. And everybody that have been tuning in this whole time, I want to say thank you guys for your support. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for the questions. Everything, means so much to me. And, and I want to say thank you to my guests for being up here today. Thank you to my beautiful co-host for being a part of this. You guys stay tuned. We do have the third installment, which is coming up August 10th. We will be talking about giving spaces, creating space and giving a voice. And again, we diving deep into ancestral healing, and we're going to have more people coming on. You guys are going to see more people, repeat individuals. But go check out Kimberly and Dr. Latoya so you guys can get more in-depth understanding to help you guys on your journey of healing as well. I am Tony Lynch. I'm the host of the Great Let's Talk About podcast. But an update, we will be coming back in September with our daily episodes, as well. So you guys keep your eyes out on that. I do have a couple conferences coming up next month. So guys, tune in for all of those. This has been another live stream, and we're going to keep bringing it to you guys, right? So you guys, go check everybody out. I love you guys. This is going to conclude this episode of the Great Let's Talk About It podcast. We'll see you guys in the next one. You guys have a beautiful day. Make memories. Remember to tell your people that are around you that you love them. And you guys, we all just welcome each other home. We're going to see you and you guys in the next episode. Peace.